Probably, many of you have heard a legend about ancient Atlantis, and at least once, but you wondered, did it really exist? Or is it just a myth invented in ancient times? Indeed, the Atlanteans were as strong as they were previously described. Did really exist secret technologies that helped them to be the most advanced state of that time? Today we will try to reveal this mystery. Enjoy watching. The name Atlantis derives from the name of the ancient Greek titan Atlas, the same as the name of the Atlantic Ocean. Some ancient writers viewed Atlantis as fictional or metaphorical myth. Others believed it to be real. Our history begins with the writings of the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, wherein it represents the antagonist naval power that besieges ancient Athens, the pseudo-historic embodiment of Plato's ideal state in the Republic. In the story, Athens repels the Atlantean attack, unlike any other nation of the known world, supposedly bearing witness to the superiority of Plato's concept of a state. The story concludes with Atlantis falling out of favor with the deities and submerging into the Atlantic Ocean. There is one problem here. Although the ancient Greeks like to exaggerate some events in their history, such as the invasion of Persia with 1 million soldiers, as they described, but sometimes Greece and Egypt were really attacked from the sea, to which scientists simply do not have an answer. Like the peoples of the sea, someone proposed that Atlantis was somehow related to Mayan and Aztec culture. Some even speculated that Antarctica was the site of Atlantis. What is true and what is myth, we can't say for sure. But before the 6th century BC, the mountains on either side of the Laconian Gulf were called the Pillars of Hercules, and they could be the geographical location being described in ancient reports upon which Plato was basing his story. The mountains stood at either side of the southernmost gulf in Greece, the largest in the Peloponnese, and that gulf opens onto the Mediterranean Sea. If from the beginning of discussions, misinterpretation of Gibraltar as the location rather than being at the Gulf of Laconia would lend itself to many erroneous concepts regarding the location of Atlantis, Plato may have not been aware of the difference. The Laconian pillars open to the south, toward Crete and beyond which is Egypt. The Thura eruption and the late Bronze Age collapse affected that area and might have been the devastation to which the sources used by Plato referred. Plato indicates the time of the catastrophe as 9,000 years ago. Even by those times, it's too long ago. The location of Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean has a certain appeal given the closely related names, indicating that according to Plato, it could be only in the Atlantic Ocean and nowhere else. In particular, they noted that only the Atlantic Ocean could accommodate land of such huge size described by Plato. The Canary and Madeira Islands have been identified as a possible location west of the Straits of Gibraltar, but in relative proximity to the Mediterranean Sea. But do you believe that Atlanteans sailed all the way from the Atlantic Ocean, traveling thousands of kilometers, just to invade a country on the other side of the planet? That sounds dubious, doesn't it? In general, as you understand, there is no consensus among historians about where Atlantis could be located. This is the main mystery of this island. Several hypotheses place the sunken island in northern Europe. Someone even confused South America with Atlantis. But in general, there are many opinions about this legend. But it is known that the Atlanteans were described as a highly developed civilization of that time, with a developed infrastructure, a strong fleet, and a powerful army. Myths about mysterious crystals and other divine fairy tales let's leave aside, and let's face the truth in the eyes. Could Atlantis exist? Could, but we can't prove it. There are only bits of information that can tell us anything about the reality of that time. But given the way that Greeks love to invent different gods shaking the world and creating different cities, it is logical to assume that all this is just another fairy tale invented by Plato. In order to give his account of Atlantis verisimilitude, Plato mentions that the story was heard by Solon in Egypt and transmitted orally over several generations through. Solon had supposedly tried to adapt the Atlantis oral tradition into a poem. While it was never completed, the most logical seems that the existence of Atlantis could be in the Mediterranean Sea. From this place, it's not far to Greece with Egypt, and sometimes other cataclysms there occurred, which could have sent Atlantis underwater. But the most common opinion among historians, and especially philologists, is that the narrative of Atlantis is a typical philosophical myth, patterns of which are speculated dialogues of Plato. Of course, Plato, unlike Aristotle and many other historians, never aimed at communicating to the reader any real facts, but only ideas illustrated by philosophical myths. To the extent that the story is verified, it is not supported by all available archaeological material. Indeed, there is no trace of any advanced civilization in Greece or in the west of Europe and Africa, neither at the end of the glacial and post-glacial periods, nor in the ensuing millennia. It is significant that supporters of the historicity of Atlantis often ignore in dialogues the verifiable part and focus their research exclusively on the unverified, Atlantis. As for the destruction of Atlantis, it is obvious that having created this country, Plato had to destroy it simply for external credibility, to explain the absence of traces of such a civilization. That is, the picture of the demise of Atlantis is dictated entirely by the internal tasks of the text. That's all for today. Thanks for your support. Write in the comments your ideas for the next video. Subscribe and see you later. Goodbye.